my take is that this is the new all-time high run. That if you just hold on to your seat, that you're probably going to be able to sell 125K at some point in the next 6 weeks.
Today's episode is brought to you by Kraken Pro. You'll hear more about them later in today's episode. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
Oh man, Jonah, this has been a great start to the year, I have to say.
Everything is going really well, except my prediction that meme coins were not going to stage a recovery in 2026. However, when I said that, you disagreed with me, to give you credit where credit is due. You said I wouldn't just short it going into the new year. I would wait for a pop and then short it.
I disagreed with you wholeheartedly, mainly because I was super bullish on Bitcoin, and I just know that when you get this massive drawdown in altcoins, that you can never short if you're bullish the market, because you're going to get these like ridiculous rallies, which is kind of what happened. But I think like the point still stands, which is that in 2026, I think that meme coins will probably not do particularly well in aggregate. Obviously, that means that there will be periods of time where they do really well, like Pepe going up 70%, which is what I was scared of, which is why I said, hey, Jonah, I don't know. Maybe you want to wait. You want to wait for the pop before you get all bearish on meme coins. I mean, the only,
to my credit, I responded, yeah, you're probably right to that. So, and I didn't short any because I was too lazy. So now do we get short these things? They just friggin'
I don't
roofed.
know. I'm not ready yet, just because I'm not ready for to call the end of this move. I think that we've consolidated in this 85 to 90 area for such a long time now. And this looks very similar to the previous bottoms that Bitcoin held. I think that we're in for a ride. I think that the equity markets are in for a ride. Gold is in for a ride. We are off to a really, really, really great start this year. And the only thing that you probably shouldn't be is sidelined. And I think that the move has just started, which is why last week I talked about buying these end of January 100K calls, because I was pretty convicted that we were going to get a good start to the new year. And it seems to be what's happening. And so kind of loaded up on those calls. Basically, they've doubled so far. But I think that there's more to go. I think the Bitcoin could easily tag 100, 105, at which point I'd be reducing a little bit. But I don't know, the structure of the market and everything that's happened over the last 7 days. It's very good to see that open interest, which basically means the number of leverage traders in the system, they're not banging the drum and getting in, and they're not getting over their skis right now. Funding rates are reasonably muted, and then also just broader risk appetite seems to be back. Gold continues to rise, and for the first time, sort of we're going up together with the rest of the market, which tells me that the sellers that we were so scared of, those angry, aggressive, mean people that kept selling our beautiful Bitcoin to zero, they seem to have run out. And
Yeah.
I don't think we get more supply activation until you get above at least 100K. So that's my general take. And I know that's not that far away. Really, like, my take is that this is the new all-time high run. That if you just hold on to your seat, that you're probably going to be able to sell 125K at some point in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's something that both of us did predict on the 1000X podcast, that Bitcoin would have a rip roar in January because the selling's done, people re-engage, they sit down, they invest. And, Bitcoin's up 8% since the start of the year. It's been 4.5 days ish. And that's a big move. And I agree with you. I think it's just the beginning. I think this is the run to fresh all-time highs. I'm fully invested as far as Bitcoin is concerned. I maintain a small crypto of my total crypto portfolio. It's mostly Bitcoin, and then I maintain a small allocation to trade. Last year, despite winning on Hyperliquid, that trading allocation was down, but this year. I think I'm going to start expanding that trading allocation if we end up in some kind of like alt season for the alts that I like. I do not like memes. I think they're not going to outperform Bitcoin over the course of the year in general. I still want to sell this pop. I just don't know how or when. So I'm going to be monitoring it closely. And I think that if we do get a rally in Bitcoin to the all-time highs, it'll probably just cascade through to ETH and then some alts, but not most, the way that it usually does. And on that rally, you'll have fantastic opportunities to short high FDV, low float, VC unlock coins versus Bitcoin. Those pairs will look good. So I think that that playbook will work. Before we get too deep, and it's also like not all meme coins have performed. Like, okay, yes, with my least favorite coin ever is up 40%. Actually, you get a better answer asking the 1000x terminal this question than ChatGPT because it's connected to all the sources and it's crypto native. Pepe's the big one; it's up 70%. SHIB is up 30%. You just ask, hey, what's the year-to-date return on these things? Fart coin is up 33%. So it's basically like, after you would have lost 90% or 80% being long meme versus BTC from the probably the Trump coin moment until the end of the year, they've outperformed Bitcoin by 20. If you just gone all in on Pepe, sure, you would have made 70%. But like on average, the memes
again at the Pico low. But still, I think the way that you run this is you basically say, okay, look, you never want to get short anything generally when Bitcoin's consolidating at lows, right? Like if you're bullish on Bitcoin, you're kind of saying, hey, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's very, very difficult to imagine a scenario where Bitcoin is going to rip up to 125K and the rest of the market is going to do poorly. Really, the way that you think about these things and what I was trying to articulate on the last podcast is you have to wait for the move. You have to wait for the pop to play out, because over the course of 2026, what I think you're probably not going to see is you're not going to see like a crazy meme coin mania with the old meme coins. It's probably all the new meme coins that end up doing well. That was really the point of what I was trying to say on the last podcast, is that right now I think you can focus on your large caps. I think you can focus on your BTC, and I think honestly the highest hit rate trade for me is just that we're getting like, when we were trading 87, like banging the drum on we're gonna get a strong move and we're gonna get it quickly, and that's what's happening right now. Is that Bitcoin? We're just breaking above 94 here. Basically, I think if you're trying to make maximum money in 2026, Bitcoin calls, gold calls, Palladium. It's crazy. We were talking about it on the last podcast. We got that. It was it's like a Bitcoin like move. It was an altcoin like move in 3 days. Nasty. This thing drops down 25% off the highs, and guess what? It bounces right back up 14%. I mean, I think that's just telling you what's going on, which is that Ray Dalio put out a great piece this morning, which I think everyone should read. And basically, the core premise of this is something that we've been talking about for a while, which is that the dollar is just getting destroyed. From basically every angle, the dollar is getting destroyed. That hard currencies, commodities, and are outperforming everything. Forget even the U.S. stock market. One point that Dalio makes, which I think is very, very true, is that everyone's talking about how AI is eating the world and how AI is doing really well, and yet somehow the S&P is massively underperforming gold. And so the question is, like, what's really driving? What is the real?
That's a red herring. That argument,
right?
That's a red herring.
Hold on. What I'm trying to say is that what's the real driving force in today's world? The real driving force is devaluation of currencies. And yes, AI is a huge driving force, but the bigger bubble, which is why gold is up, was up 60% last year, and equity markets were up 20, regardless of whatever AI is doing, is the real thing that's happening right now, is that there's a massive devaluation of currencies around the world. And this is probably going to continue throughout 2026, and that's really good for for Bitcoin. That's really good for gold. It's really good for silver. It's really good for palladium. It's really great for uranium, which I've been beating the drum on for a bit. I'm ready. I'm ready to get back into uranium. I'd sold out a little bit, but now I'm ready to get back in. I think maybe I sold out too early, but I'm ready to get back in this thing.
Yeah, I don't think you're too late on anything except gold. If you had a clean slate, the only thing that I would say is probably not the safest buy here of what you just mentioned is gold. I think Bitcoin's about to go ballistic. I think that the stock market's going to continue going ballistic. The reason why I said it's a red herring, um, your argument about the stock market rallying less than gold, is that um, de-dollarization impacts both gold and the stock market. They're both USD denominated. And AI is not the only thing driving the stock market. Like when you talk about the stock market, you're talking about, the S&P 500. AI has like secondary or tertiary, like very indirect effects on most of those companies. Like maybe 450 of them are just like, at best, it's, the people inside of those companies are a little smarter because of chat GPT, and maybe a few middle managers get fired. But like most of the AI gains really aggregate to like Nvidia, Google, the companies that rallied even more than gold did last year. So I think the whole AI thing versus gold, like you'd need to look at a more pure play than the entire stock market to make that comparison apples to apples. However, I do agree with your general premise, and I don't think the point you're making is like invalid or anything. I just wanted to clarify it.
If you're an eligible US trader looking for an edge, Kraken Pro is the only crypto exchange offering margin trading in the US. Qualified traders can tap into 150 plus margin markets with up to 10 times leverage on select assets, using Bitcoin, Ethereum, USTD, and more as collateral. Plus, you get real-time risk tools and Kraken's signature deep liquidity all in one trusted platform. Check out Kraken Pro and see if you qualify at kraken.com/features/margin trading. Crypto trading involves risk of loss, and margin is not for everyone. Margin services are offered to U.S. customers through Payward Interactive Inc. For full disclosures, visit kraken.com/legal/disclosures and review Kraken's margin disclosure statement. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
As far as meme coins, one final thought on that. While you were talking, I generated an image, since Nicolas Maduro lives in Brooklyn now, which is pretty cool. I
Yeah,
generated
maybe I should go visit him.
I generated an AI image of hipster Williamsburg Nicolas Maduro.
Dude,
Um,
what are you doing
and
with your time?
it doesn't take much time. It takes less than one
I know.
second to create this slop now. And what I was thinking is like, if this were 2024, I could create a hipster Maduro meme out of this image and probably send it to like 10 million or 20 million with a podcast. But that's just not happening anymore. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that the meme coin space is a little bit fucked. And I
Yeah, I mean,
I
to
take
be
your
fair,
point.
like even like I don't know because I didn't actually check, which probably should have. Because there's a period of time, Jonah. I don't know if you remember this at all, but there was like a real like genuine period of time where uh, you could just like monitor world events, and then if anything happened, you would immediately go to Dex Screener and you would look
Yeah,
for tickers related to that thing, and you would inevitably find some sort of coin that had run to 50 million because everyone and their mother was gambling on this shit. I
yeah.
mean, dude, like the
So
the
that's
like
done.
like like Peanut the squirrel, right? You remember that
Oh,
shit?
that peanut was amazing. Slurf,
Dude,
there are all sorts of things.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
look, I mean, Maduro, like, you go, this is the state of the trenches, man. You go look up Maduro, and the best thing that I can find is like a couple million market cap. I mean, that's pretty boring.
What are you guys doing out there? But
Like,
yeah,
what are you
that's what
guys
I mean.
doing?
And basically, like if WIF is up 38% with Bitcoin up 8%, that's just algo on algo violence. That's basically like WIF has established itself with a big enough market cap that some correlation bot is probably like, okay, it should be roughly 4.5x beta to Bitcoin. So let me just like bid it when it's up less than that beta and offer it when it's up more. But that's only sustainable for like very short illiquid periods of time. Over the long run, all of this stuff is, bag holders will try to get their liquidity when it goes up. And so that's why I still like shorting this stuff. It's just apparently it's not as easy as I thought it would be. There's a little bit of technique to it. But should we
No,
talk
there's
about
one. We've talked about this before. Remember when I was talking about how to this was an episode a long time ago, but it was really like how do you think about shorting things in general? Is you always have to be very tactical with it, and generally what you want to do is you want to start shorting these things after they've made some sort of significant like an impulse driven move off of some level, because that type of move is what draws in the old sellers, right? What draws in the people that maybe they don't want to sell off the lows, but if something's up 60-70% off the lows, now people are really willing to get in, and they're like saying, okay, well, now this is my chance to finally exit this asset. And that, I think, is probably what's going to happen. I mean, like go look at WorldCoin. I don't think that, no matter how much Sam Altman tries to pump that thing, like if this gets, you know let's look at previous rallies off lows. WorldCoin up 200% off the lows once, goes up 160% off the lows another time. Right now we're about 30% off the lows, so maybe you want to wait until it gets back up to like 125, and then that's
yeah,
the fucking greatest short of a lifetime, right? And then you short that thing against Bitcoin, and you're sitting very pretty. I mean, I don't think that thing's moving particularly hard after that, right? So it's
yeah.
all about like shorting. At the end of the day, it's all about setups now, and getting long is all about everything in trading. At the end of the day, is about the entry. It's like where can you actually hold this thing? Where can you actually hold this trade? Um, that's why I think you should probably move faster rather than slower if you're sidelined on Bitcoin right now, just because I think the market structure here looks very good, and it tells me, hey, things might be moving pretty quickly.
This is going to look like a generational entry in 10 years. I really believe Bitcoin's going to
Yeah,
$1 million.
yeah, make in 10 years. Yeah, of course, Jonah.
Well, I mean,
We're
we
talking
can.
we're talking about 1 month. This is gonna be an entry for 1 month.
I think it's going to be a grand slam in a month and a generational wealth creation event over a 10-year time frame. Let me put it that way. I'm very bullish. I really am. I do not understand why this would go down. Interestingly enough, we should probably carve out a bit of time to talk about Venezuela and Iran, because there are big geopolitical shifts happening, and it's going to matter for digital assets as well as other commodities that potentially there's a trading opportunity on. I I I will say this is rumor, not fact. Apparently, Venezuela had stockpiled quite a stack of BTC, and I saw some. I knew that like Trafigura allegedly was moving cargoes of Venezuelan around sanctions with, or at least I'd heard rumors. Who knows if they've actually done it? And taking payment in Tether or Bitcoin. Like I would not be surprised if I know Maduro has a lot of gold. That's famous. That's like there's a whole history behind that goes back 100 years with the United States involvements in Venezuela, early during the 20th century. But like for Bitcoin, I think they've been stacking it, and now the US probably has access to that reserve, or is torturing people to get it and to get the seed phrase. And basically there are some questions like, will it get sold? Will it get rolled into the US strategic Bitcoin reserve? Will it get put into escrow? I think I would be shocked if they didn't just create the foundation of the SBR with seized Bitcoin. And so I think we could
No, but
see
I
in the
mean
next month.
that's sort of the whole point, right? The whole point of the SBR, of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, is so that in situations like this, you are able to accumulate that Bitcoin and put it kind of like shove it away. I think Venezuela, it's very, very, very likely. Again, yes, this is rumor, but I think this is pretty well substantiated that they were heavy in the Bitcoin mining space for a decent amount of time. Obviously, they have access to extremely cheap energy. They can mine Bitcoin at effectively zero cost, and so Obviously, I think that as a sanctioned country, that's what they're going to be doing, and the rumors that's probably what they have been doing. Right, is they've been
Hmm.
accumulating substantial amounts of Bitcoin, not only on the open market, but most likely through Bitcoin mining with their low cost of energy. And so, what that tells me, and I think this is actually perhaps one of the reasons for Bitcoin rallying, is that uh, when you take down a narco state like that, you probably remove some source of supply, right? These states are very likely using their Bitcoin mining as ways to fund their operations. They're probably a net seller, not a net buyer of Bitcoin, would be my guess. And so taking down Venezuela and taking down Maduro and sort of subsuming their entire operations into a country that does not sell any Bitcoin and that does not need Bitcoin to fund their operations is probably net beneficial for BTC. This would be doubly true if Iran goes through regime change. In my personal opinion, if Iran goes through regime change, you probably want to start buying a ton of Bitcoin calls, and that's kind of like the whole point of this podcast is us sitting here talking to each other, trying to like logic our way to specific trades that we might want to take given the future, right? So now you know, hey, Bitcoin did really well after Venezuela got taken offline. Could have something to do with the fact that they were Bitcoin mining and supplies being taken offline. Iran's actually an even bigger player when it comes to this. It's known that they use Bitcoin to finance their operations. That's why it's half the reason that Hamas had billions of dollars with Binance is because of Iran's love for Bitcoin. So my take on this is that if you do see regime change in Iran, there'll probably be a delayed reaction from Bitcoin, and that gives you, the listener, the time to actually probably go accumulate some calls, possibly even short dated stuff, right? Like a week, 2 weeks out, maybe you get a 5-6% pop in BTC. So I want Iran to fall for a variety of reasons, but this one would be good. This one's up there,
This one, anybody can be happy, even if you're a lover of the Ayatollah and a Shia fundamentalist. You can get excited about being long Bitcoin, and the Ayatollah is falling because Bitcoin will rally. But yes, I agree with you. I think, well, just going back to your situation, your conversation about Venezuela, the power generation in Venezuela is mostly hydro. Um, and then the rest of it is covered by this like very, basically hydro is a good way to generate power, but the most efficient way to generate electricity is through gas, just burning gas in a turbine, natural gas. Um, One of the least efficient ways to do it is to burn crude oil or fuel oil. Like, this is an ecologically catastrophic, ultra inefficient way to make electricity. And you'll see it in like places with way too much crude, like Saudi Arabia, where it's getting phased out because they're smart. But in Venezuela, they just, kind of, that's what they do to cover the gap. And Venezuela was still a place where there were like rolling blackouts and power was mismanaged. But absolutely, Bitcoin mining was going on both by individuals who are getting cheap government subsidized hydropower, probably just like mining it at their homes and using it to pay for their lives because the Venezuelan, what's their currency unit? The peso, just totally hyperinflated into worthlessness. And then the government was also probably using it to buy weapons and finance drug trade and do all sorts of other heinous, reprehensible stuff. So that selling is going to stop if Venezuela becomes a normal economy. And so that's probably bullish Bitcoin. Also, they were probably selling Bitcoin out of their strategic Bitcoin reserve to fund whatever it is that they needed to, bribes, payoffs, just to keep the house of cards from falling. And that's all going to stop now too. So there's just less selling pressure on the market. And the United States is probably going to tuck away that Bitcoin and never sell it. So I think that's a very bullish feature to the market, is just not having like a motivated seller funding narco terrorism with Bitcoin. Now, should we talk about the oil situation there and what it means for crude oil, and then go to Iran next?
I think a lot of people had a lot of conflicting opinions on what was happening here, because obviously there was the idea that, okay, well, maybe the U.S. comes into Venezuela and that leads to a short term spike in oil because production's going to go down. The other way of thinking about it is that if the U.S. comes into Venezuela and over time actually manages to open it up and U.S. companies come in, then production, which has collapsed by like 60% in Venezuela because of lack of expertise in extracting this heavy crude, then maybe we go back to what it looked like before, and then oil prices go down a ton. Um, But you had a really good take on X, which I think maybe you can walk through.
Yeah, and feel free to ask any questions because oil is very confusing and complicated, and people just don't understand it. I saw a lot of like really dumb suppositions about what Venezuela means for oil. I said that oil would rally on Monday, and people were like, "You're crazy! This is the most bearish thing ever. Imagine being as stupid as Jonah." I may be a crypto larper, but I really know my stuff when it comes to oil. So I will definitely try to walk people through this. It's not intuitive. So Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves. What does that mean? It means that under Venezuela, there is more oil than there is under any other country on earth, which is crazy to think about. They have like something like tens of trillions of dollars worth of oil at today's prices sitting underground. So people are like, oh my God, now it's all coming out. Oil is going to zero. The answer is no, it's not. And here's why. There are a couple. So oil under the ground is worthless. Even oil above ground is worthless until it gets refined into something that we can actually use, like jet fuel or petroleum. And even then, gasoline and jet fuel are still useless until an internal combustion engine, which is another kind of like mobile refinery, refines it into something useful called locomotion, right? Or power in the case of Venezuela's super inefficient power plant. So basically, there are like a number of stages that have to be passed through in order for this under the ground oil to become valuable. And so basically, Venezuela, the world consumes about 105 million barrels of oil per day. A barrel holds 42 gallons. It's like a little more than waist high. It's a barrel. So 105 million of those get slurped up by refineries around the world every day. And Venezuela currently produces about 1 million barrels a day, so less than 1% of the world's consumption. Um, their domestic economy. So then you have to ask yourself, what matters for the price? It's how much do they export, right? Because they could consume all of it and internally, and then Venezuela wouldn't matter. But unfortunately, Venezuela is such a mismanaged disaster that they consume almost none of their oil and they export most of it. So then what happens is, okay, so they export this oil. It's like about let's just say slightly under 1 million barrels a day of exports to keep the math simple. Their historical maximum production was 3 to 4 million barrels a day. So let's just say that they get back there. Their domestic the situation where they get back there is like the most bearish possible scenario is where Venezuela becomes the 51st state of the United States. Not saying this is going to happen, but like for the sake of understanding the boundary condition, imagine Trump makes Venezuela the 51st state. You have American level.
Highly doubt.
Highly doubt it.
That'd be fucking hilarious.
It would be, imagine. So we have to explore them. Yeah, it's like Alaska, Hawaii, and Venezuela, and then the lower 48. Basically, that would be the most bearish. The geology of Venezuela is very complex. The oil, some of it's a solid at room temperature. You have to mix it with diluent just to make it like consumable by a refinery. A lot of Venezuelan and oil used to go to the Gulf Coast refining center, Texas, Louisiana, back in the day when that was just an easy source of oil. So all the refineries there were configured to consume heavy sour salt, which means sulfuric complex oil. But now, obviously, because of the explosion of shale in the Permian Basin, that's like ultra light sweet oil, almost something called condensate, which is like it's like it's like not even oil. It's like it doesn't generate any tar or fuel oil. It's like really, really light. So basically the refining system over the course of the last 15, 20 years has reconfigured from being optimized to consume Venezuela like oil to being optimized to consume like the opposite type of oil, light sweet. So you couldn't just throw a bunch of Venezuelan into the Gulf Coast refining system in America and expect it to work well. It would blow up every refinery and they would have all kinds of explosions and problems and outages. So it's like infrastructure. What people don't understand is that unlike crypto, where tokens and money just move around easily and everything's kind of quasi-fungible, the physical commodities market is very different. And unlike Saudi Arabia, where you stick a fucking toothpick in the ground and oil comes out, like Venezuela, in order to restore production from its current million barrel a day threshold to the maximum historical from decades ago, 3 to 4 million, that would require years. Like it took Exxon like 5 to 10 years to explore the Guyana mega field nearby. It would probably take Venezuela a minimum of 2, a maximum of 5 years to get them pumping 3 to 4 million again ish. And in that scenario, Venezuela's economy, in the 51st state scenario, Venezuela's economy is like consuming 2 million barrels a day because there's 30 plus million people living there. So then exports basically go from 1 million a day currently to 2 million a day there. That's an increase of a million a day. It would move the needle. It's probably worth a couple bucks lower in flat price. But like, it's not that big a deal, and people just don't understand this. They see the world's biggest proven oil reserves and think you're an idiot. They think it just magically comes above ground and hits the market. People should more think of this like a bunch of oil is getting discovered on the moon. That's a more illustrative example because it's like, how do you get it to the refineries on Earth, right? It may as well be on the moon. It's miles underground, right? And it's not easy oil. So basically, that's the end of my rant. And the final piece of this is like, so it's a bit bearish long term, meh short term. But the regime change thing, I think what's more important is like what this means geopolitically. So Trump did this to exact leverage over China because China consumes a lot of Venezuela and it's guaranteed supply. China gets it at cheap prices because Venezuela couldn't sell it anywhere else because sanctions. Now those, if Venezuelan oil hits the open market, then that's more ways for Trump to be able to sanction oil to prevent China as a chess move to prevent them from threatening Taiwan because they'll lose more access to oil, which is critical for them. They don't produce nearly enough. China's the world's biggest oil importer. They have a lot of oil they have to get. And so if more of it is controlled by the United States, more of it can be taken away from China. More of their lifeline can be taken away if they do something the United States doesn't like. It also screws up the Russian refining arbitrage because Venezuela is so mismanaged. Their refineries all went to shit. So basically, Venezuela was exporting crude to Russia. Russia was refining it and then sending refined products back to Venezuela and other pieces. This screws up Russia's leverage over that. It makes it harder for Russia, China, and Iran to place weapons in the Western Hemisphere on America's doorstep. And the final piece is like, if Trump has now proven that he's willing to literally just like send in the Delta Force commandos, which is so freaking badass, to like kidnap a guy who's leader of a country, that can happen to Ayatollah Khamenei too. And now that would be bearish oil. Iran is a very different oil equation than Venezuela. That would be crazy bearish oil and probably pretty bullish Bitcoin.
I've got a lot of thoughts, but let's hit the ad break and come back, and then we'll talk about what the future of geopolitics and oil and Bitcoin look like.
If you're an eligible US trader looking for an edge, Kraken Pro is the only crypto exchange offering margin trading in the US. Qualified traders can tap into 150 plus margin markets with up to 10 times leverage on select assets, using Bitcoin, Ethereum, USTD, and more as collateral. Plus, you get real-time risk tools and Kraken's signature deep liquidity all in one trusted platform. Check out Kraken Pro and see if you qualify at kraken.com/features/margin trading. Crypto trading involves risk of loss, and margin is not for everyone. Margin services are offered to U.S. customers through Payward Interactive, Inc. For full disclosures, visit kraken.com/legal/disclosures and review Kraken's margin disclosure statement. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
Oh man, like honestly, I think you did a really great job outlining all of the different angles here. The last part that you said, which is that if we can send in Delta Force to go remove what, yes, we say is not the legitimate leader, but in reality is very much so the de facto leader of a country. What is that? Where does that leave us when it comes to the rest of the world? Like what is the rest of the world going to do here? I mean, I really don't think it's a coincidence here that there are mass protests going on in Iran to remove the Ayatollah at the same time that Reza Shah is now for the first time like really going hard on Twitter and other media sources. Reza Shah is the presumed leader of Iran in a transitionary government. He's the
He
son
has
of
no riz, that guy.
the guy has no riz, unfortunately. Actually, I said this to Jonah in a private chat. I think if Reza Shah was like 3 inches taller and better looking, like it would be over. Like Iran would have fallen yesterday. But like, for whatever reason, he's got no riz. He's got no way with words. So he's kind of like boring and lame. But we love him. We want him to be in charge again. He's way better than the Ayatollah. He's not an Islamo-fascist. So we like the guy. Get him back in. You get the Rizless guy back in charge. But I don't think it's a coincidence that he's out there. There have been a couple of different periods of time over the last year or so where there have been protests in Iran and they haven't really amounted to much. This time seems to be a little bit different. And it's no coincidence that this operation happened at the same time that these events are going on in Iran, because really what it does is it pours fuel on the fire and it freaks out the Ayatollah a ton. I do want to make clear that the geopolitical situation in Iran uh, is very different than the geopolitical situation in Venezuela, in the sense that the Ayatollah is 86. He doesn't really do much day to day anyway. The Islamic regime is an entrenched political apparatus. And while that's true in Venezuela, Maduro is a little bit more of an actual leader than the Ayatollah is. The Ayatollah is more of a figurehead. And so to actually take down the Iranian regime would require like a true rising up of the people. And Mossad helping out on the streets is, can't hurt, but it would require a true rising up of the people. Now, if that happened, if you see any inkling of that going down, I think you're buying a ton of gold, you're buying a ton of BTC, because when the geopolitical winds shift, non-sovereign currencies tend to do well. Just general risk, I think, goes up, because if you take down Iran and you take down Venezuela, everything that you said about China becomes existential, right? It becomes existential for China. If they no longer have access to all the oil that they need, what do? How do they act? Have you backed them into a wall and they quiet down, or do they get belligerent and angry?
They do have all the access. I'll just add a quick asterisk. They would have access to all the oil they need. They just wouldn't have exclusive access to it. And if they did something horrendous, like started a war in Taiwan that effed up everybody's supply chain, then they wouldn't have access to oil they need.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, that was to clarify what happens when their oil is controlled by theoretical adversaries as opposed to allies, right? That's really what it is at the end of the day. It's kind of like it's the same way that Germany was laughing at Trump when he said, "Hey, you can't rely too much on Russian oil," because they weren't aware enough about, well, maybe Russia could actually turn into an adversary one day. They just didn't even believe it. And now, if you I think that was 2018. You fast forward 4 years, and then suddenly they're in big trouble. And there was an energy crisis that winter because they were scrambling to cover their needs, because they're like, oh wait, fuck, we can't use Russian oil anymore. And I think China very much so knows that if oil is controlled by the West, they're getting that spigot turned off immediately, right? So I think that's a big thing. Now, to me, what this says is that all of my investments in my book right now are concentrated solely around very, very, very liquid assets, because I think that the world is changing extremely quickly, and you don't really want to be sitting in assets that you can't offload particularly easily. Like, I actually think real estate's tough right now. I mean, if you're in VC, or if you're in PE, I think that can be very tough. I think PE is in for bloodbath, personally.
Me too.
Just absolute bloodbath, because the world is changing very quickly, and also the liquid markets are making people a lot of fucking money, and so people are going to want to come back into these markets and going to want to trade these markets. I mean, emerging markets for the first time are trading extremely well. They actually outperformed the S&P this year. So I think in aggregate, like, I'm just very, very, very bullish, looking forward to the next year. I think that this is going to be an opportunity to make a ton of money. That there is a generational wealth opportunity for those brave enough to be a little. That's a tweet.
Yeah, I just shared your tweet. So I have two questions for you. If Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson were an Islamic Persian guy, how soon would the regime have fallen? Would it have been like 5 years ago? Second question, what did you mean by this tweet? A lot of people are like, give me the ticker. Like, can you just elaborate a little bit?
I think, well, there's sort of three things here. Number one, this was a little bit tongue in cheek, based on a conversation that I had with my friend, who basically said, "Hey, I'm booking flights to Venezuela. I'm going to go down there and scope out specifically Venezuelan real estate, and I'm going to try to like, he speaks Spanish pretty fluently. He's from a Hispanic country, and so he's like, hey, I'm just going to go down there and try to see if I can open up markets. And I think that's kind of what's happening, right? Is there's sort of three main opportunities here. Look at study what happened in the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed. Study what happened when Yugoslavia collapsed. Study what happened when basically any current regime starts to melt away, and we in the West gain access to those markets. If you have a little bit of gumption and you channel your inner 19th century British explorer, if the Iranian regime falls, go learn some Farsi. If you're like 22 years old, maybe you want to go to Iran. I'm not even kidding. If maybe you want to go to Venezuela. The moment the war in Russia ends and the Witkoffs start investing billions of dollars into Russia, if you speak any Russian, that's going to be a great opportunity for you. So this was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, but also kind of serious statement where there is edge to be had here. As if you're young, if you don't have any ties, to go try to figure out, get the lay of the land in countries where the political landscape is shifting. Try to figure out, can you start an import-export business into Russia? Can you start an import-export business into Venezuela?
I have an anecdote for you.
Are there things that maybe you want to go sell to the Venezuelans? Potentially, there's a lot out there that they don't have.
A couple of my VTOL buddies
they might actually want.
People who are earning very modest base salaries and de minimis bonuses working in the Moscow office at VTOL, as well as some of the peripheral, we call them the stands. A couple of the young guys from those groups, after the Ukraine war kicked off, with the relationships, like the number 2 guy on the origination book in various, we call it FSU, the former Soviet Union. Right. They left to go form their own independent bucket shop brokerages to basically get Russian oil laundered into the Western hemispheric refining system. And these guys are in their late 20s, early 30s. They're now billionaires. I hung out with one of them at his compound in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat when I was in France this summer last year. It's ridiculous. Exactly what you're saying is happening.
Tell me what exactly they did. How did they go from being minimum wage workers at the FSB to becoming billionaires?
They weren't minimum wage workers at the FSB. They were corporate functionary level income earners at an international oil company. Okay. And they did things that VTOL's legal department wouldn't have approved. They were nimble and startup-y, and they had the relationships, both on the supply, basically what you need if you want to go into an economy that's just changed massively, either closed off or opened up, is you need to have what we in the commodities world called the armpits. You need to have you have 2 armpits, right? You need to have both the supply side and some demand kind of under your arms captured. You need to have both sides of the trade. So it helps to have cheap supply. To your point earlier in the podcast about crypto trading, entry price is everything. So in this case, these guys were getting cheap supply from Russia because Urals, Russian oil, was trading at instead of its normal price of Brent plus $1, it was Brent minus $38. So they had that, right? And then they could probably sell turn it into some other kind of oil via mixing it. They probably knew somebody with a storage tank somewhere random. And then you don't need to know the chief downstream, i.e. refining officer of ExxonMobil to sell that oil. You just need to know somebody who knows him, which is 1,000 people. So, you leave the last few percentage points of profit to your offtake valve, and that guy captures a few riskless points selling it to Exxon or BP or Shell or whoever. So basically, you need the cheap supply, you need the entry price, and then your exit price can just be you have a commodity that people want. So then the exit price is you just need access to liquidity for that. It's much harder to go the opposite way, to buy from a general pool of liquidity and then sell at some dumb price to an unknowing buyer. That was well, that's a much less defensible business model, because eventually the buyer wises up and stops overpaying. But the cheap supply, like you're solving a problem for them, right? And to quote the famous Mark Rich, I would say he's the best trader of all time, the father of modern oil trading. He said the law is the only objective standard, right? So if these guys were in their Monegasque jurisdiction or Pakistan or wherever the hell they set up shop, if they weren't breaking the law, they were doing something that Vitol couldn't do and that JP Morgan couldn't do. And fine, the market needed that. So
correct. I was actually thinking of the book, The King of Oil, when I wrote that tweet.
Yep.
I was thinking, if you're willing to be a little bit daring and entrepreneurial, you can find some of these opportunities. And it's a lot easier, obviously, if you're already embedded in the system, but you don't necessarily have to be in order to. It
helps to be a little bit embedded before you go in.
It helps to be embedded
because you need the supply. You need the supply.
But that's where you start, right? Like that's what I'm trying to explain is that if you're sitting here with nothing right now, figure out how to get embedded. Call up Jonah.
I have a few ideas. I'm hustling. I got some side hustles going right now along those lines. I think the geopolitical map is going to get rewritten drastically. It matters for crypto. It matters for any commodity. I think basically the way Iran falls, I think Iran's next. I don't fully understand why they're having protests now. I'd be eager to get your take, but I think what it basically.
Well, I mean, the take is very simple. It's a coordinated effort. Right now to the CIA and Mossad to get this thing done.
Yeah.
And it's the right time. And we've been pushing that. I say they have been pushing this for a long time.
We Americans. Yeah, I hear you.
Americans have been pushing it.
I think the reason why it matters.
It's the timing. And I do want to, I do want to say it's definitely not 100% that it's going to happen. But there are a lot of signs that there are operations potentially going on right now that have not happened in the last 10 to 15 years, and that would lead to a regime change.
So basically, why this one matters for oil and Bitcoin, like Iran is not like Venezuela. Iran's more like Saudi Arabia. You stick a toothpick in the ground, the oil comes out. So you could bring on, I would guess, another 1 million or 2 million barrels a day pretty quickly if it became a Western aligned nation. So that would indeed be bearish oil. The other thing is that it would align with market prices instead of getting sold to China at discounted prices. Another thing is the NITC, which is the National Iranian Tanker Corporation, has basically an armada of tankers floating full of oil at sea that can't be sold at all. They're all full. That would all just get dumped on the market. So if a Maduro style Delta Force raid, again, so Chuck Norris, man, I love that shit. If that were to happen, then yes, you do not. Oil goes down like the moment that it's released. And the other thing is like the Ayatollah, even if he's not day to day, he is the only respectable figurehead who can keep that country together. His son and the other random like runner-ups for Ayatollah number 3 are not going to cut it. They don't have the respect. There are too many factions. Only Khamenei can keep the thing together. So even if he's not doing anything, his existence in the country, like if he flees to Moscow, the country just becomes I wouldn't even say a client state of the West. I would say like.
I don't think so. I think it would take a lot more. It would take the installation of Reza in charge. It would take the dismantling, of the entire apparatus. I mean, think about it. There are, tens of thousands of people in this government, and they clearly have a succession plan, and they also have a president outside of the Ayatollah that does run the country. But all in, I think we agree on the statement that there are a lot of really interesting things that you can do. There's also a secondary point here that I wanted to talk about, which is that sort of for the first time since COVID, I've felt that the government and the way that the world is heading, it's comprised of these mega trends that you can't really fight, which make it a lot safer to make big bets, in my personal opinion. So, for example, you have NATO countries by the end of 2035 all saying together, we must hit 5% of GDP when it comes to defense spending. The US is at 3.4. Every other European country is below that. And so you just know for a fact that there's going to be increased defense spending. And I don't necessarily think this has worked its way into prices yet, nor has it been noted that there are a lot of defense upstarts in the United States. So maybe you want to start investing in defense tech companies. I mean, the whole reason that Palmer Luckey started this bank called Erebor, which presumably is a crypto bank, a large part of it is because he's now lending to defense tech startups. That's what he wants to do with Erebor, because he sees the opportunity of there is a lot of money that's going to come from the government into defense tech over the next 5 to 10 years. Are you going to take advantage of that? How are you going to make sure that you're positioned to make as much money as possible based off of these mega trends, based off the mega trends of AI, based off the mega trends of the debasement of our currencies, based off of the fractured as I hate Ian Bremmer, but he has one thing that he's right about, and it's that we are in a G0 world, or I guess maybe G1 if you want to put the United States on top. It's every country out for the interests of itself, and that by necessity is going to we're going to have increased defense spending, and we're going to have increased we're going to be really focused here. So obviously, I think that right now we're in a world where there are all these sort of intractable and unbeatable megatrends, and that you can really latch onto them and take advantage of them and make yourself money. The reality is that the vast majority of people on this planet are not going to do that. They're not going to A, notice the trends, B, they're hell, I can tell you that they're not going to bet on the trends. And so if you can be somebody that notices and bets on these trends, I mean, this is really the first time since COVID that I've seen where it's clear, right? In COVID, it was, we're going to print money. We're going to print as much fucking money as it possibly takes us to get out of this, And that's really, that was like, I don't even want to call it a mega trend. That was an action that we knew that the government was going to take. Now, I highly encourage everybody to pick up the book Fourth Turning, because I think it outlines the period of time that we're going through very well. We're entering into a period of geopolitical upheaval where you can't really escape what's going to happen, and so you just have to make sure that you're on the right side. That's my take. That's why I put out that tweet, and I feel like this is actually probably a good place to end it. Unless you have
very good place to end it.
So keep your eyes open, make some money, and stay tuned. Come in next week and we'll have some more ideas for you.
Love it, Avi. Great talking with you as always. Own Bitcoin, be creative, and stay liquid.
Stay liquid. Talk to you later, Jonah.
Nothing said on the 1000X podcast is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the company's funds or projects discussed.